What's going on, everybody? My name is Michael Hoff, part of the Face Off Sports Network, and today we are talking about kicker streamers and rankings for week 9 of the fantasy football season. If we can just recap for a hot second, we did tell you Cairo Santos, we told you whoever would kick for the Bears was going to produce. It wound up being Cairo Santos. He did score 10 points in his return. He was rostered in less than 5% of leagues. Evan McPherson, rostered in just 24% of leagues, scored 8 points. Will Reichert, rostered in 7% of leagues, scored 6 points. We don't like that. We want 7 or higher. That's our bar around here. We're not settling for 6 points. But be that as it may, we're going to get into our kickers, streamers, rankings, all the tiers, all the fun stuff. Let's get into it right now. What's going on, everybody? Yes, my name is Michael Hoff, part of the Face Off Sports Network. As I said, feel free to follow me on X at the FF Realist. Most importantly, more than anything else, if you have any questions or comments, fire them into this chat. I take pride in answering every single one of your questions, whether it takes me an hour, 2 hours, God forbid more. I take great pride in helping you guys out, answering your questions. That's what it's here for. So, and as long as you're asking a question, feel free to hit that like button. Helps me out immensely. Just helps all the algorithm, all that fun stuff. But anyway, be that as it may, we're going to get into our kicker streamers and rankings. I do want to go into one thing here. I always love to do this. One of my favorite things to do, because I feel like it gives some perspective, because kickers have a rough stigma. People think that kickers do not matter, but in actuality, they do. And why? Case in point, last week in week 8, Chris Boswell of the Pittsburgh Steelers scored 19 fantasy points. That was more than Derrick Henry and Javonte Williams, whom both had 2 touchdowns each on the week. So you're getting a kicker scoring more fantasy points than 2 running backs that have 2 touchdowns each. If that doesn't tell you kickers matter, I don't know how else to help you. Kickers are important. If they're in your league, they're going to help you win a fantasy football championship, whether it's by 2 points or a quarter of a point. They could help you. So that's why we're doing this. That's why I'm here. I do want to say this. One other thing. Let's go through the bye weeks. Last week we had 6 teams on bye. This week we don't have 6 teams. We do have 4. We've got the Browns, we've got the Jets, we've got the Eagles, we've got the Buccaneers. The biggest concern there in terms of bye weeks is clearly Chase McLaughlin, who has been fantastic. He's had a tough week here or there, but he had a great week last week against the Saints, which we told you that he would here. He was one of my top 3 ranked kickers. So I would tell you guys this: if you're someone who rosters Chase McLaughlin, if you can somehow keep him, if you have the bench space, totally do it. If you can't, I get it. You got to drop him, but just be ready to scoop him back up. Again, if you have any questions about that, fire it into the chat, because I'm going to put together a rest of season ranking video in terms of kickers. That'll be coming out at the end of this week. Spoiler alert, he will be on there, and he will be high on there. So he is someone worth having. So I do want to address one other thing. Mr. Eddy Pineiro of the San Francisco 49ers. I've gotten questions, I've gotten concerns based on what happened in Houston. In Houston, yes, the 49ers had a problem. No, but to answer everybody's question, you're not worried about Eddy Pineiro. If you look at the Houston Texans from a fantasy football perspective, outside of running backs, they are top 5 in fewest points allowed to quarterbacks, wide receivers, tight ends, and kickers. They are allowing nothing. They're allowing 3.4 points on a per game basis. They have allowed, and that's the kickers. They have allowed 24 points all season long to kickers. Obviously, that's the league low, and that's 18 fewer points than the next best team. That just puts it in perspective of how good the Texans have been. And to me, the Texans have been underrated. I don't know. Now I think people are taking notice after the way they beat up the 49ers. But so just if you're somebody who has Eddy Pineiro, no, I'm not dropping him. I'm keeping him. He's in my top 12. Hang on to him. Brock Purdy hopefully comes back. He's going up against a Giants team that is fifth in points allowed to kickers. So they're going to flip the script in terms of points allowed. So I'm expecting a bounce back from Eddy Pineiro. So I did want to just address that only because I got asked about that a lot prior to recording this video. Do not worry about Eddy Pineiro. Now, with that out of the way, let's get into our kickers, streamers, rankings, tiers. Again, if you have any questions, fire them into the comments. I answer every single one. I don't give a crap. I'll get to you. Now, my streamers are rostered in 35% or less of leagues. That's the bar. The first kicker I'm going to go with here in terms of streamers is going to be, again, for the second week in a row, Cairo Santos of the Chicago Bears at the Cincinnati Bengals, currently rostered in 3% of leagues. Now, I do want to put this little disclaimer here. Let's not be silly. He's only rostered in 3% of leagues because up until, say, 11 o'clock or so on Sunday, we still did not know who was kicking for the Chicago Bears. I was getting a ton of DMs. I was getting messages here when I was recording the live show with Pete Nova, who does a fantastic DST show. We didn't know up until that point, but Cairo Santos does come out and he puts up 10 points in his return from injury. Mind you, by the way, just before his injury in week 4, he puts up 17 points. And here's the thing that I like the most. Here's why I said last week, I don't care who's kicking for the Bears, I like them. This Bears offense is consistently putting kickers in a position to succeed for fantasy football purposes. Right now, over the last 3 weeks, the Bears have averaged 4.3 field goals on a per game basis. And by the way, then there's the opponent, the Cincinnati Bengals. If we're taking a look at the Cincinnati Bengals and what they have done this year in terms of fantasy, the Bengals are 15th in points allowed to kickers. And I get it. When I say that, you're like, who the hell? Why am I interested then? But in the last 3 weeks, they've allowed an average of 10 points on a per game basis. This would include last week in that Jets win where they allowed 12 points to the Jets kicker, Mr. Nick Folk. So I love Cairo Santos here. Whoever's kicking for the Bears is going to succeed. I just think the Bears offense is getting into a groove as per Ben Johnson, and we're going to start seeing more field goal points. Let's get into the next kicker that we're going to mention. This guy is rostered in 15% of leagues. By the way, all of these are as per Sleeper. It's Jason Myers of the Seattle Seahawks. The Seahawks are one of 6 teams on bye last week, but I do want to kind of put this out there. This is why probably Jason Myers is rostered in 15% of leagues because of the bye, because Myers is actually the 8th best kicker in fantasy football right now. So people probably had to drop him. So this is what I was talking about at the top of the show, talking about Chase McLaughlin, saying that people might have to, like, hopefully you don't have to drop him. People might have had to drop Jason Myers. So take a look, see if he's out there. In his 7 games this year, he has scored less than 9 points just twice. By the way, remember when I mentioned the Houston Texans, saying the Texans allow nothing, only 24 points in the year, 18 points less than the next best team? Let me get my words out. Jason Myers is the only kicker this year in fantasy football that has put up double digits against the Houston Texans. He has gone through the gauntlet. He has won. So I love Jason Myers in this spot. Myers, by the way, much more favorable opponent this week than the Houston Texans. He's going up against the Commanders. Over the last 3 games, the Commanders are tied in allowing a league high 12.3 points per game to the kicking position. I absolutely love Jason Myers in this spot. I think he's super sneaky. Again, only rostered in 15% of leagues. Somebody had to drop him. So if you need a kicker, go pick him up, right meow, enjoy the ride. The last guy I'm going to mention, listen, I'm going to be a realist here because I am the FF realist. This is the least surprising name you're going to hear in terms of kickers here, in terms of streamers that I've mentioned so far this year. It's Riley Patterson of the Miami Dolphins going up against the Baltimore Ravens. He will be home on Thursday Night Football. Now, he is only rostered in 2% of leagues. Now, why do I bring up Patterson, right? Why does it matter? Well, Patterson quietly has scored at least 9 points in 3 out of his last 5 games. Through the season, he's hit all of his extra points, just missed one of his field goal attempts. And in week 8, he was one of 10 kickers with double-digit points. That was in that shocker against the Atlanta Falcons. He's going to look to make it 2 in a row against the Baltimore Ravens here that have allowed an average of 12 points per game over the last 4 weeks to the kicking position. We'd love to see that. And the Ravens are allowing the 7th most points to the position outright. Listen, among the teams in the top 12, top 10 in points allowed to the kicking position, the Ravens are the only one that have had their bye week. So even with that bye week, they're still allowing a good amount of points to the kicking position. So again, those are my streamers, all roster in less than 35% of leagues. Cairo Santos, Jason Myers, Riley Patterson. Let's go and get it. Now, I do want to preface this when I get into the rankings here in the tiers. It's very top heavy in terms of, as I was looking through this particular week in the matchups, a lot of the higher owned kickers have fantastic matchups. So you're going to see the rankings going to be very top heavy in terms of highly rostered players. But, I just got to be a realist about it. But let's get into this right now. Let's get into our top 12 rankings. And when we go into tier 1, it's going to be the first kicker on our list is going to be the Money Badger, Michael Bagley of the Indianapolis Colts at the Pittsburgh Steelers. I absolutely love this matchup for him. In the Steelers' first 4 games, they allowed 7 points per game to the kicking position. In the last 3 weeks, their average has jumped up to 12 points. Bagley has not had a top 10 he's not had a top 10 week yet. I apologize, since taking over for Spencer Schrader, who everybody absolutely loved. I believe this is the week, though. I believe this is a good week for kickers on both sides of the ball. Again, Steelers have been adding more and more points as per lately. So give me Michael Bagley as my number 1 kicker on the week. When I go into number 2, listen, I tell you, he's got a residency in the top tier. He's got it for a reason. I know we didn't have a great week last week against the Denver Broncos, but that's Brandon Aubrey. The Cowboys will be at the Arizona Cardinals. After scoring at least 8 points in 5 of the first 6 weeks, Aubrey had just 6 points against this Broncos team that I mentioned. I love this bounce back here. The Cardinals started the season by allowing 11 points combined in the first 2 weeks. Since then, though, they've allowed 12 points on a per game basis. So the script has flipped. The Cardinals are now allowing points. They are coming off their bye. Along with that, the Cardinals are allowing 2.4 field goals on a per game basis this season. That's the 4th highest in the league. So when you're giving that kind of opportunity to a kicker like Brandon Aubrey, who we know he kicks it from, 50, 60 yards without a problem, you're going to give him that kind of opportunity. I'll roll the dice on Brandon Aubrey maintaining his spot in that tier 1. Rounding out tier 1, and I do want to preface this by saying when I get to tier 2, the other kicker who's going to kick off tier 2, it's interchangeable here with those two, but I will go with Cameron Dicker, the kicker. The Chargers are going up against the Titans. Listen, to be fair, Dicker's scores have fluctuated over the last 4 weeks. It's gone from 6 to 17 to 6 to 13. But with the Chargers offense, I like this matchup for him. Entering week 9, he has had just 1 game with less than 8 points. So give me this matchup here with Cameron Dicker going up against the Tennessee Titans. I think it's a perfect opportunity for him to be right back in this top tier where he belongs. Maybe I should have put 4 kickers in the tier here in tier 1, but I didn't, so I apologize. Let's get into tier 2. Tier 2, we're going to go with Tyler Snoop-a-Loop of the Baltimore Ravens. Actually, I can't go any further. I like to do this. Give me a hot second here. I'm going to flip around here, and I'm going to do a fantasy football walk of shame here because I would love to give you guys your flowers. A lot of people ask me, hey, how come Tyler Loop wasn't in my top 12 rankings last week? And he wasn't. So that's on me. I apologize. You guys were right. God bless you. But he's here now, and he's my 4th ranked kicker on the week, going up against the Miami Dolphins, like I mentioned with Riley Patterson. It'll be on Thursday Night Football. It's going to be at the Dolphins. listen, granted, most of you told me, "How could you not put Snoop a Loop in there when you've got Lamar Jackson coming back?" We know we had the snafu that's now being investigated with Lamar Jackson, whatever's going on there. By the way, either way, Loop should have been in my top 12 last week. It was not. So we're going to right the wrong this week, week 9. Last week, Snoop finished 5th in points allowed with points scored with 12 points. It was his first double-digit game since week 2. So I like the opportunity here against the Dolphins. Dolphins, as of late, have been allowing points to kickers. So especially if we get Lamar Jackson coming back, it's even better. So again, I do think that he is very interchangeable with Cameron Dicker, the kicker, in terms of tier 1, tier 2, that 3-4 rank. But right now, I will put Tyler Snoopaloop as my 4th ranked kicker on the week. When I get into the 5th ranked kicker, we're going to go to Chris Boswell of the Pittsburgh Steelers going up against the Indianapolis Colts. He's the week 8 best kicker. I mentioned at the top, scored more points than Derrick Henry and Javonte Williams, who both had 2 touchdowns each. By the way, he's one of 6 active kickers to be averaging 10 points per game. 3 games with 10 points or more. The 3 games with 10 points or more, 2 of them have come in the last 3 weeks. So he is, while he's a little sporadic, he is starting to get on a roll here, at least in terms of some consistency. So give me Chris Boswell here as my 5th ranked kicker. My 6th ranked kicker, and again, I'm going to timestamp all this so you guys can go back. It's Eddy Pineiro of the San Francisco 49ers going up against the New York Football Giants or the New Jersey Giants, depending how big you are on a geographical standpoint. But like I said earlier, the Giants are allowing the 5th most points at the kicking position. This is an ideal spot for Eddy Pineiro to bounce back. I know everything looked ugly in San Francisco last week, but it doesn't mean Eddy Pineiro is dead. Do not panic. I will also say this. If somebody panicked enough to drop Eddy Pineiro, go ahead, pick him up. Good. Have that. Take that ride. So I do think Eddy Pineiro bounces back. I do think that he's going to be, he could even creep into top 5, but for now, he's going to be my number 6 kicker. Absolutely love him in a bounce back against the Giants. Again, I will timestamp all this, so keep that in mind. I designed this rhyme. Let's go into tier 3. Tier 3, Jason Myers. He was one of our streamers, of course, rostered in less than 35% of leagues. That's yet another one. Go into the description and see the timestamps. Go ahead, fire it in there. By the way, while you're in there, feel free to fire any comments you have in there. But we absolutely love Jason Myers this week. We absolutely love Cairo Santos as well, who is yet another kicker, who is one of our streamers. Again, go into the timestamps and check it out. I will give you a kicker, and this is actually kind of fascinating in terms of our tier 3 rankings, and that's going to be Mr. Joshua Carty. And I'm going to be honest with you guys. I started looking into this as I was getting ready to record. I usually only pick 3 streamers. This is one of my favorite sneaky plays of the week, Joshua Carty. And then I said to myself, why the hell aren't you putting him as a streamer? He's rostered in only 4% of leagues, right? And my bar is 35%. So you know what? Let's have a Carty party. Joshua Carty this week is going to be my 4th streamer on the week. Sometimes I give you a bonus streamer. It's a screw it alert. We're breaking the rules. We're giving you a 4th streamer, Joshua Carty. I'm loving him for week 9. Going up against the Saints team, by the way, the Saints have allowed 31 points to kickers over the last 2 weeks. Remember, I mentioned the Texans too many times so far? Yeah, they've in 2 weeks, the Saints have allowed more points to kickers than the Texans have allowed all season long. So I love Joshua Carty in this spot. Carty's had a hot stretch from weeks 2 through week 4 where he had 34 points. After that, he had 3 straight weeks of 5 points, but mind you, 2 of those 3 games were against teams that were in the bottom 10 in terms of points allowed to the kicking position. So I think this is a very sneaky spot for one Joshua Carty. It's the Saints allowing the 3rd most points to the kicking position, 10.4 points on a per game basis. Give me Joshua Carty to be a sneaky play and my 4th streamer. Let's get into tier 4. And I do want to kind of preface this, by the way. I mentioned at the top that a lot of this had to do with very top-heavy rankings in terms of kickers that were highly owned that I liked a lot that had great matchups. Do not panic if you're a Kayami Fairbairn, if you're somebody who rosters him, do not panic. You do not have to drop him. You do not have to pivot. You can keep him on your roster. Keep in mind that a lot of times kickers that finish in the top 10 are still putting up close to double-digit points anyway. So for him to be 10, it doesn't mean that you're missing the mark. It doesn't mean that you're doing something terrible. They are going up against the Denver Broncos. The one thing I'll preface this here, listen, Fairbairn's been getting his opportunities. He's been hitting his opportunities. He's been doing rather well. The big thing to take out of this, I mentioned it, we're not playing Will Lutz under any circumstances going up against the Houston Texans. I only mention that because the two teams are playing one another. But Ka'imi Fairbairn, if you have him, play him, plug him in. Let's see if CJ Stroud and the Texans offense can build off of what they did against San Francisco. Let's see if that was just a matter of San Francisco not showing up, or let's see if the Houston Texans actually decide to play some offense. So keep that in mind as well. But I still love Fairbairn this week. Riley Patterson was my other kicker in tier 3, which again, I will put the timestamps up. You can go ahead. You could take a look at the timestamps and find what I said about Riley Patterson, roster in less than 35% of leagues on Thursday Night Football, going up against the Baltimore Ravens, the last kicker that I'm going to mention here. And I will just also say Harrison Butker of the Kansas City Chiefs going up against the Buffalo Bills at Buffalo. Don't be stunned if Butker slips out of my top 12, and not drastically, but enough that I like other players. Because again, to me, there's a lot of kickers to like here, which is kind of surprising since we have 4 teams on by, I should say. But don't be surprised if Butker finishes outside my top 12. Listen, he's converted almost all of his kicks up except for one against the Buffalo Bills in his career, but it's all a matter of the opportunity. What are we going to get here? Butker is a huge wild card, so don't be surprised if he slips out of my top 12 rankings. I will tell you guys that if you follow me on X at the FF Realist, or if you're here on YouTube, I will post my top 12 rankings again so you can get a look at them. But Butker, to me, is teetering on could fall out of my top 12. But be that as it may, those are my streamers, my 3 streamers. I gave you a fourth for the hell of it. My top 12 rankings, my tiers. But guys, I hope you enjoyed this. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to fire them into the chat. Until next time, stay thirsty, be kind to one another. We'll catch you on the flip side.